All right, welcome in everybody. It's another 5 minutes with Shaun and Shaun, maybe 10. Today we're gonna be doing the interview style you guys all saw last week with Andrew Street. If you missed that episode, what were you doing? Go check it out. But the concept behind the interviews this year is that I'm full of ideas, but I want to hear what my guests want to talk about. So, welcome in today's guest, Shaun Rains, aka the Dealer Superhero. Mr. Rains, how are you, sir?
Better than most, not as good as some.
That, what a great answer. One of the best I've had on here, Shaun. Thank you so much for it, my friend. So, we've known each other a long time. We've done a lot of business in different areas. I'm slightly nervous about your topic. I'm not going to lie to you because you know me well and you have some. There's a lot of places that you can go. So without further ado, Mr. Rains, introduce us to the topic.
All right. Well, it's twofold, and
Okay.
I know that you're probably thinking this guy's going to want to rail on OEM program standards. I'm not. So everybody can take a break. Every time I post one of those, by the way, with a little Deadpool on it, people are like, I get calls like, "You better be careful." I'm like, I didn't say your name. I didn't out you. I'm trying to help dealers.
But isn't the guilt funny? Right? Because I
Yeah.
didn't say your name. I get it all the time because I never have called out anyone by name. It's not who I am. I'm in the business of bringing things up. But when I get calls from those people and they know who they were,
Yeah.
shame on you.
Yeah.
Shame on you for calling me and saying nothing. The second you should have thought about calling me, you should have thought, man, he's probably right. So, dude, I love the post, but thank you. The heart can't handle more OEM talk today. So we're going to try and keep it lighter than that.
Yeah. So I'm not going there. So,
All right.
but two part, what I'd like to frame this with is digital advertising for many industries, but automotive, maybe second only to maybe insurance, tanked in 2020, like big time, like by billions of dollars.
Yep.
And so I'd like to ask the question without suggesting exactly the right answers.
Okay, great. Love it.
Where to spend it in 2021? Where are you going to spend digital advertising or advertising dollars in general? Where are you going to spend them in 2021? And then I think we're going to have enough time to answer the other side of that, which is once you've figured out where you're going to spend it, because all you want is leads, because all dealers have an addiction problem, an addiction to leads.
Correct. With lead addicts. Absolutely.
I also want to talk about a topic that you know that I've been passionate about for quite some time, and that is what are you going to do with those leads once you get them?
Yeah.
Right? What's the process for those leads, right? So first, and I know that your business is so tailored to taking the truth from data to help dealers either not be taken advantage of, to get the most out of their investments. I mean, essentially it boils down to share with us what's really going on. And we'll contrast what your vendor reports tell you versus what analytics tell us. Let's make sure that we get a full clear picture from analytics. So is everything wired up the right way? Are we paying attention to Google Console, and are we paying attention to how Google Ads is connected? So all of those things essentially you're taking to help a dealer make good decisions. But in 2020, there were a lot of dealers that abandoned things that have been massively popular for years, for obvious reasons.
Yeah. With
the COVID-19 situation. And yet there were countless dealers that had best year ever, best month ever, right? It exploited some things the pandemic did in terms of supply chain issues in multiple industries, certainly ours in the auto industry. I'm working now in the RV industry with some dealers as well, and power sports. So it had a just catastrophic effect on supply chain. In our industry, that is kind of an interesting wrinkle to what's happened. But imagine if you were spending $10,000 a month in paid search and you just stopped, and then you had, and I'd be interested in the comments here, if you're one of those dealers, in fact, this will be really good. If you're one of those dealers that abandoned one of the big digital advertising options like Google paid search, or maybe you were spending heavy with Facebook, and you were forced to stop spending those dollars, yet you still had amazing sales results once we got through that March, April. We started to get into May, June, July. Would love to know in the comments if you were one of those dealers. And also, are you going to return to a same or similar spending level, or have you already in 2021, right? So the reason why I like this topic, Shaun, is because I think that dealers could have pulled the plug on some of these things before the pandemic. Mm-hmm. Do you not agree?
I do. No, and here's the thing, dude. You talk about you touched on let's start with the last part. So you talk about this idea that you pulled out all your money, right? You stopped advertising and you set a record. You had the biggest year of your life. Oh my God, it was incredible, right? I warn against that being actual reality as more of a fool's gold. The only reason I say that is because of the supply chain issue you mentioned, right? So you have two things going in that favor. You have no cars, nothing being built. So whatever's on ground is for sale. Everyone wants to get rid of it because it's been aged by 30 days because of a lockdown at minimum. Fine, great, be aggressive, wonderful. Then you have a pent-up consumer demand that lasts 45 days of being locked in their homes. They get out and they're ready to return to business. So you see the tide rise all the way up to record proportions. If it would have paced from May to August, from January to that, you'd have set a SAR number through the roof. It would have been one of the biggest years ever. But that isn't what was going to happen. And it looks that way because it was going to look that way. It was inevitable that you were going to sell what you had, catch the curve, and then you weren't going to have cars again. And what happened in November? November goes down. I didn't see a lot of those. We had a great record month in November post, did I? No, because you're dealing with an election. We've had clients for over 7 years. I went back and looked at election years. This year, outside of COVID, wouldn't have been that much different. November sucked 4 years ago. It just did. And so there isn't a ton of information I think that people should change. Here's what I'll say. You scale back. You're excited. You're like, dude, why would I ever? One of my largest groups right here, Madison, Wisconsin, did exactly that, had exactly that success. My only question to them is, what about when everybody has the cars again? And what about when the consumers aren't as pent up to do business? Are you still confident and cool that no ad spend is the route you want to take? That's all. And again, it's selfish, Shaun. My business is built in helping dealers understand their ad spend and their vendors. Sure. But let's just assume I was running a store. I would have to think about it. So let's talk about paid search as an example. Paid search, everyone's got their opinions from it's the dumbest thing in the world to it's the only way to survive. Okay. I think you and I are fairly reasonable. I don't think either one of us polars those sides. Here's my thing. You got a message, you got inventory, you got something to say, message, I guess, all three, or an offer, something to say, offer, and inventory, then be specific in your paid search. Mm-hmm. Don't just give people money and tell them to go find it. Be specific. Pick your models. Make sure you're watching your inventory levels. The second the inventory level evens out or lowers to an uncomfortable level, pull back the spend. I think what you should have learned this year is to stop setting and forgetting your money. Mm-hmm. That's what you should have learned. Not that it doesn't, advertising exists, dude. I was having this conversation with a buddy of mine. We were watching the NHL bubble, right? At the end of everything. And there's an ad on the NHL bubble for PS5, Shaun Rains. I looked over at him and I said, now tell me, why would a company that has a product sold out for 7 months at minimum give a shit about advertising? And he looked at me and says, I have no idea. I said, because they don't want you to forget when they have them to come buy them. Yeah. Am I off base? Where are you on the first half of this?
Yeah, no, I'm in the same place. So I would say to the last point that you made, I think that's kind of part of marketing 101, right? It's like, when is the best time? Well, it's usually when the markets are down is when you actually want to be spending. And if you're capable of even overspending a little bit, it's one of the best times, if not the best time, to actually encroach into other market share that you didn't have previously. So if everybody stops spending, but you can afford to continue to spend, you should probably do it because of that reason. You're going to be
guys who did that they kept running, and they're continuing to run past their competition. Let me just touch on that.
Yeah. And I know that there are probably people that will see this and they'll say, well, but we've been around for 50 years or 80 years. And in some cases, your brand is so well established that it won't make that much of an impact.
No.
But if you're in a highly competitive area, even if you've been around for 50 years or 80 years, the chances are that you might have a compromised reputation, or you just might have been around for 80 years, but there have been other people in that 80-year period of time that have also built really, really great businesses that are attractive to people. So you can't totally rest on that, but in some cases, if you have a really well-established brand in a market, it may be powerful enough for you not to have to continue to try to be, spending heavily in a down economy. That said, as far as the Google paid search goes, I've always been pretty bullish on Google is the tip of the spear. And to be more specific, search is the tip of the spear. So if I were, and I'm going to a little bit, if I were going to give some dealers some advice of like, well, how do we rebuild this kind of plan? What order should we be doing things in 2021? Number one, I'm one of countless people who are going to give you some sort of advice or give you my opinion about what you should do. No matter who it is, whether you trust what the Shaun and Shaun moment is telling you here, or whether you trust other industry professionals, if they're credible, if they've been at it for a long time, and they can back up what they might recommend with some points, some data points, then that's okay. But that said, I'm always a big fan of exhausting your options within search before you start spending heavily in other places. And I'll say it this way: every dealer should be trying to generate their own sales opportunities, call them leads, call them whatever you want. But in this case, we're looking for opportunities to sell people, right? So we want to generate that through a phone call or a chat or a Facebook message or a lead form that gets filled out, right? All these different sources. The best thing you can do for your business, whether you're a car dealer or you're selling coffee, is you should be trying to get those people directly in relationship with you, right? That should be number one. And then you begin to supplement. And this isn't me. I'm going to start trashing on all the third-party lead sources. That could be a different video. Just kidding. Or am I?
It could be its own series, dude. I don't want to sit here and make it a joke like that, but the downfalls of where vendors sit could be its own series.
Yeah. So first and foremost, first priority in 2021 is you should be reestablishing which channels are the most lucrative, where you basically are finding the most gold-rich ground, if you will, right? And search is the place where people start. Whether you're looking for, hey, is that when could I get a new Bronco because it's so badass, I want one, whatever. Or, oh my goodness, incentives on getting a Jeep Wrangler couldn't have been better. I need to go do that. Getting that one-to-one connection is great. You should absolutely look for search opportunities, both organic and paid.
That's what I was going to ask you. You were being very, very, I didn't know if you were doing that on purpose, where you just kept being search. Nope. And I'm like, Shaun, people are going to need to ask this. So you're referencing both the organic portion and the paid portion, paying attention to both, and making sure that you're focused on both as necessary. Shaun, would you weight one more than the other, though, given your history and your knowledge and understanding of the situation? Would you?
Very, very good question. And my answer would change depending on the dealer's scenario. So let me give you a couple of scenarios. If you look at the health of one dealer's organic presence, right? Just do a basic SEO audit. And you find that all of the really important metrics, what their authority looks like, the number of links they have, where they're ranking, like every single portion of, like, do you look healthy around who you are, primary searches, then you may not need to go heavy or heavier in SEO. So again, until you have a snapshot of where somebody is currently organically, it's dangerous to just make a blanket recommendation. But once you have that, so let's just
always look at the data. If lesson number one of this discussion is look at the data, I mean, inspect it. That's what you're talking about. Now, people might not have the ability or understanding how to do so. There are plenty of tools out there to help you. There are even companies that I believe will give you a heads up on this sort of thing. So Shaun, with your point now on that, so I'm with you, case by case basis. How do you then intertwine paid search. Let's take your scenario. I'm healthy, right? I'm good on my SEO side. So I still need to keep an investment going because that's a moving needle. I don't think people understand that enough. A one-time investment in SEO and a one-time focus is a waste of money. You may as well walk outside and throw the money in the air. You need to have an ongoing focus of that. Is that still the case?
For sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
I mean,
so how do we get paid search into an already existing SEO strategy? How does it fit?
let me make this point. I don't sell SEO. I do recommend some people that are the best at it. I know the people that are very best at it. So this is not self-serving. My advice here isn't because you can come to me directly and I'm going to be doing your SEO services. I no longer even do paid search, but for a few businesses, right? I'm not doing any dealer paid search myself. So my recommendations here are not self-serving. That's important. SEO is a constant. If I'm in business, right, and I've got local competition, I've got national competition, I never stop spending in SEO. There's a reason why Google never tells us this is exactly how you need to do it.
Yeah.
They don't make money when you're still figuring out how to rank and how to make sure that you are doing performing well in their search engine organically. That said, let's just go back to the dealer who's like, I'm pretty healthy from a local search perspective.
Yep.
In most cases, local search perspective health is usually based on I can find the dealership and variations of the dealership pretty easily. You're strong with your Google My Business, right? You can talk to people like George Nenny, who's just literally kind of jumped on the skyrocket, and others about like how important that is. And they're doing a great job of making sure they advocate to dealers of how important that is. But oftentimes, once you get into the model specific searches, things start to get really, really, really crazy. So from an SEO perspective, you definitely need to be doing more work probably there. That said, if you have general decent health organically, then paid search comes in either to help you where you're deficient around model specific searches, right? If you're not involved in paid search at all to drive up more service business, you're clearly missing out there too, because that could be a big fixed ops could help you in leaner times, of course. But I always tell dealers that if you can get healthy from an organic SEO perspective, paid search almost ends up being the companion to. You could think of it as a safety net, like it's going to keep you from the places where organically it's going to take you forever, right, to get into some of those top searches from a ranking perspective. SEO oftentimes is let's lift all the organic traffic, right? I mean, that was one of the biggest things that Gifford would preach when we were at DealerOn together is don't just chase rank, right? Everyone wants to be number one, and that's totally true. Everybody wants the highest rankings, but you can't forget that there's a whole bunch of best practices within SEO, local SEO especially, that's going to help lift your organic traffic. And that's essentially one of the important metrics to look at when you're paying somebody for SEO services is your organic traffic lifting. But ranking is important. And if you have really difficult keywords to try to rank for, paid search can of course fill that out. So I look at them as a companion. I started to kind of feel that way about search, both organic and paid, SEO, SEM years ago. And I still feel the same way. I think they're the first two places where I'm spending my money, but I'm going to do it very, very intelligently. And you made a comment about this, and this is one of the things about the paid search side is you can't afford to give the responsibility of your paid search to somebody who tries to put it into such a machine-oriented, automated, it's set it and forget it, because there are a lot of providers out there that it's easier. It's also easier for their business to keep stronger margins if they have more of that automation and they don't have to rely on humans to do a lot of that. But you and I know companies, in fact, you and I are both close friends with a couple of companies out there that they do painstakingly watch over how their marketing campaigns work. And there's a difference in that. So I would, of course, lean towards one of those companies, but I think that they have to work in conjunction with each other. And oftentimes the paid search strategy is basically outlined based on how you're performing organically.
But see, I like how you say that, because I think that's a big part of it, right? I think people need to understand it is a if this, then this, right? If you're already into SEO and you're already there, your next logical step to understand your market and to garner your share is to look at paid search. Now, paid search is also, so now Google has come out with discovery and local ads. as a part of that metric. I don't know if you're familiar with that stuff, Shaun, but it's something that we've come in contact with and we're running in some stores, and it's been an interesting thing and to watch. And I won't take up people's time to tell you how silly it is that Google doesn't even know how to categorize its own traffic. They call it display when you're looking at it under the channel analysis, but the second you go under source media, it gets swapped in and put under paid search, Google CPC, because that's technically how it's bought. You see what I mean? It's the dumb shit like that you need to keep people around you that understand that. Because car dealers, that's not who they are.
Yeah.
Google Analytics wasn't supposed to be on car dealers' websites, okay? We have bent Google Analytics to our will over a decade plus to make it do what we want to do and see what we want. It was built for e-commerce, Shaun, you know that. So it's still not for us. Even after 10 years and billions of fucking dollars, it's still not designed for us. It's still designed for e-commerce. And you've got to remember that. You've got to use what you can from it. So the bigger question is where to spend it, right? And where in 2021, I think paid search is there. Social it's kind of there. Yeah, I mean, some of these companies doing social can get the phone to ring. If you can get your phone to ring via social, I'm all ears, baby. But if it's just going to be a 30-cent VDP view, I'm not as excited. I'm not as interested in a Facebook VDP view. I may be even less interested in their form fills. But my buddy Dave Lemon, who I trust very much, I love him to death, he says to me, hey, man, you got to look at the way the AIA, whatever all this nonsense is with the marketing and the third-party data sharing and blah, blah, blah. Here's the thing. If I can get a lead form, Shaun, and I think this ties into the process part, if I can get a Facebook lead form, then who's measuring that on the other end? If my provider comes to me and says, it's time for you to try Facebook lead form, and I say, okay, money doesn't change. How will I judge it on the back half? Who will I go to inspect this? And I know you have a lot of dealings with Strollet. I do too. Josh, Vinny, love you to death. They can give a lot of feedback as well. But from your perspective, Shaun, how do you see judging, let's just use the Facebook form fill as an example of success from your perspective? I'm interested to hear that.
Yeah, so it's anytime I give my opinions on Facebook, I always get people who are like, "Oh, well, we can prove you wrong, whatever."
Please, and save it, people, for proving anybody wrong. This is an opinion show, and these are opinions of people who've been doing this a long time. I'm sure anyone, as they say, what is it? Something about data never lies, but liars never cheat, or so. I don't know. My point is that you can twist data to look however you want. We're just here to try and give you the most basic view of it, without it being twisted. There is no narrative here. And if vendors are going to come to me and tell me they can disprove me, it's probably because they have a narrative. Sorry for the sidetrack. Let's get back to the form fills.
Yeah, you can torture the data until it confesses.
That's correct. And I don't. I leave the data as is, and I look at what it says, and I read it. That is all. I don't put it in a blender. I don't put it through some AI feed. Nope. Yeah. Nope. I log into GA. The GA screen sits in front of me, and I dissect the data in front of me. That is all.
And by the way, torture the data until it confesses. I got that from Dennis Galbraith, which he probably got it from somebody else, but old friend of mine in our business.
But it's a good one. All right. So how will we know if switching to form fills from website traffic, at least in the AIA Facebook world, will be worth it for us, Shaun, on the back end? How will we know?
So here's the thing about Facebook. All of my recent experience, both from businesses trying to harvest leads, meaning B2B, typically companies selling services to dealers. Mm-hmm. Dealers that I talk to that still harvest leads from Facebook. What I'm more concerned about is once that lead is captured, mm-hmm. At what percentage are those leads actually closing, right? Versus somebody who's getting more information.
Agreed. Which would happen on my website. So I'm deferring the click. That could have gone to my site, engaged my chat tools, my DR, my whatever. I've deferred that and I've said, no, I want their form right now because Facebook pre-fills it and blah, blah, blah. Who gives a shit? Which sounds like people don't even know they submit forms. But again, so they submit the lead. Now what, Shaun?
Well, that's a great question. If they submit the lead and somebody is thinking, I still need more information, right? Do I have
I
that?
submitted a lead on a specific lease ad for a car. So I just want
Right.
to be clear what my ad was about, okay? The
And
context
often,
is lease
and
ad, I submitted my
oftentimes,
info.
oftentimes, a lot of the leads that get filled out in Facebook are people that are chasing some type of super lease offer or special finance, right? We've seen plenty of that where people are desperate for a car and they found the right ad in Facebook that says, oh, we can get you, right?
Yep. We
There's
gotcha.
there's still so much more to share with that consumer, right? And so do they actually do the leads, the filled out forms, do they result in sales at a rate that you would be willing to pay for them? Is
Do you
always
just look at that though, Shaun? Do you look at anything in between that? Do you look at
well,
anything
no,
from any kind of a contact metric to when the lead comes in? Because let's be fair, right? If people are using BDCs, some of this might not necessarily be controlled by a sales outlet, right? So is there any other way that you judge it, or is it purely did I sell a car on a lead?
from a BDC perspective, really from a dealership perspective and Facebook, I'm much more interested if I can generate somebody into a messenger conversation so I can find out what they really fucking want, as opposed to go in here and fill out the lead as if we've got it black and white. That's a big problem for me with Facebook, because Facebook is a place where we still go to be willfully distracted. And we're often distracted by things that have nothing to do with how many people start their car shopping experience on Facebook. You have found
I have no idea. I don't buy cars like a normal
nobody.
human. I haven't bought cars like a normal human in 20 years. I have no idea what anyone goes through to buy a car. I keep telling people this all the time. I can't put myself in the consumer shoes. Are you kidding me? I don't know. There's no consumer shoes for me to be in. I don't know what that's like. You probably are closer to it than I am, and I don't even know.
Listen, if you're Ford and you're releasing the new Bronco, if you're GMC and you're putting out the new Hummer and you've got some specialized event on social, in this case in Facebook, that's fantastic, right? And that's a great place to try to get leads, right?
Leads.
It's like seeing the new model at the state fair. Now you tell me how many dealers love those leads, right? Because
or at Costco, Shaun. Come on, I got my car at Costco. I mean, what else? Where can I get my leads from?
But you know what I want more so out of just somebody that fills out the form because they're interested, and I don't care if it's a Bronco or something that you regular, if it's a Mustang. What I want is the conversation. I want the engaged consumer. And let's just talk about how Strawlet does that and what they evaluate. Yes, they're looking for the immediacy of somebody that's ready to engage. And everything they're doing is really the same thing that dealership should be doing, which is how do I take this person from general interest, casual interest to engaged, right?
Okay, hold on. I got to stop you there. Here's why. Because what you're talking about is a company in Strawlet that's whole life is built around being a BDC to others, right? That's their business. That's who they are. But the problem I run into is that not everybody, so let's say we're using a messenger tool, right? That isn't Strawlet, that my company has outsourced to another provider, Shaun. That one-to-one communication is jacked up because I've done that. So I think what I'm hearing from you is either work with someone who has the dealership understanding and the one-to-one and can handle those conversations, or bring that shit in-house and find someone responsible inside your dealership to have those conversations. Because if you're going to drive into a conversation with your chat provider, and then the chat provider is going to submit a lead to CRM, and you think you're going to call that customer back and get them on the phone, you have lost your mind.
Right. No, yeah. My point about lead form versus I want to actually generate messenger opportunities is very much because of I know what's on the receipts, the real data, the real deal from Strawlet's human intelligence of powering a chat, text, Facebook Messenger platform, right? Correct. So that is part of the services that they provide, and dealers that take them up on that piece. We tell them all the time, route as many people to Facebook Messenger as you possibly can, because our people are going to set appointments at a rate you've never seen before. That's why, because it's engagement, right? It's finding out way beyond general or casual interest from a forum into let's have the conversation, because if you've got them right there, why
on the platform, right? And on the platform they're comfortable with, right? You're not asking to do it from your website on your phone for somebody else. No. You're saying, Facebook Messenger, you got everybody you talk to in Facebook Messenger. Here we are. Let's just keep talking, right? I mean, that's the general concept is, and this is one of the biggest things people need to take away from this discussion right now, is that is exactly the definition of meeting the customer where they want to be met. And in those discussions of Facebook Messenger, Shaun, I want to tell this to the audience. If you're going to take those Facebook Messengers and all you're going to say to them is call you or come in your store, don't bother.
Right.
Do not bother using Facebook anything. If you don't want to work a car deal via text or Messenger, don't bother putting it on your website. All you've done is piss people off and give them the idea that you're open to things you're not. Is that fair, Shaun? Or am I, again, being a little bit of a jerk there?
No. Well, I think that's one of the things that people like about you. Is
yes, I don't know if that's true or not, but I guess the point is that's who I am.
You're a little bit of a jerk, but fucking who cares, right? It's like, come on.
Honesty sucks, man. Sometimes it comes across like being a jerk, but it's just.
It's not.
Trying to be honest.
I'm just playing. You're not a jerk. You know what people can't handle is most people can't handle candor, right?
Yes. Honesty and candor,
right? And most people can't handle a constructive criticism. Actually, most people can't give it very well. That's usually the bigger problem. But no, you're right on the money. I mean, you're over the target. That I want to step back a little bit because you're also, you made a great point around. Okay, well, what happens when people are gonna fill out the lead, or lo and behold, you'd use your chat provider to convert the live one-to-one into a, let's just throw it into the CRM and follow up with it later. That there is a word for it. It's just not politically correct. So
it's fucked up is what the word for it, dude. It doesn't make any sense. And you shouldn't run your business that way, because if I engage with your business that way, let's just say I wanted to buy a canoe and that's how you treated me, I would go buy a canoe elsewhere. Yeah, I'd be down the river to another place trying to buy me a canoe, Shaun. I would not handle that sort of interaction in my own life, especially for a $25,000 or more piece of machinery. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's absolute nonsense. You know, and I think probably everybody watching is like, yeah, of course I wouldn't want to do that. But you'd be surprised.
Yeah, you would.
Surprised at how many dealers are trusting that their chat, text, whatever. I mean, Strawlids, it basically enables both chat, text, as well as Facebook Messenger conversations. So it'll identify
all in the same portal, right? All in the same kind of connection.
All in the same widgets or whatever you want to say. Yeah, sure. Absolutely. All the same. And I have told dealers that, well, I don't really want to do the chat thing. I have told dealers, well, if you have at least somebody that will actually answer it from their phone, you should at least put the free Facebook Messenger widget on your website, right? It's easy to do. All of the smaller businesses that I work for that aren't big dealerships, I have it on all of their sites, and they literally.
Only if you're going to do something with it, though.
Yeah, only if you're going to do something with it.
Yes. Let's caveat all of this. I know you want more leads, but that's not what this will be. This will be conversations that you yourself will turn into leads. Like when people came to our front doors. Do you remember how that was back in, I don't know, let's just call it the late 90s, early 2000s? We had to turn people into leads by getting them into our stores.
I have a non-automotive client that literally got somebody jumped on their website and started that messenger conversation on a Sunday evening, and they were having a problem with their RV, and because we set it up the right way, they responded. The business responded to it immediately. Well, we're not open today, right now, at like 11 o'clock on Sunday, but this is where we're located. If you're able to get there, we're going to be open at 8 a.m. Be happy to go in even earlier to help accommodate you. They needed some kind of whatever. They're on the road, broke down, needed a special part, something like that. Anyway, they totally accommodated this person, and that person was so over the moon happy about it. They were like, literally wrote a sweet review about it. Super happy, right?
And then, Shaun, was it a sold customer of theirs, or just someone passing through in their RV who needed a part and service?
Somebody just passing through. Yeah. Somebody just passing through.
Imagine the care we take, right? It's like when I hear about salespeople who pass by someone on the street with a flat tire and they pull over and they're like, hey, we can help you with this flat tire. And the guy's like, this is awesome. What do you do? He's like, I happen to sell cars if you're in the market. You know what I mean? Like that's how we go. And you can do two things. You can build your business and you can be a better human, right? Yes. All just sort of mixed into one. It's kind of perfect.
Yes. Well, as they say, it's always relationship before transaction. Always. You got to build some rapport. So why not be doing things that are actually right down the swim lane of your business anyway? So anyway, I'm a big fan of Facebook, but I really like, for dealers, really almost all businesses, if you can man somebody to pay attention to Messenger, whether you pay a service that does it or whether you're a small enough business that you could manage it yourself, there's gold in those hills for sure.
I would agree with that. So let's recap the discussion on where we should spend our money. As far as I'm concerned, we should be focused on SEO. We should be focused on a little bit of paid search, but not at the levels you guys are used to just giving people money because you're going to get co-ops for it. Sorry, right. We had to go there a little bit. It's necessary because a lot of you live that way. Yeah. Don't just spend it there. As a matter of fact, here's what I'll tell you. If you've got co-op dollars to burn, there's two things. One, traditional ad spend. Laugh at it as you will. I really don't care. If someone's going to give you free money, spend it at a place that really is pretty general in radio and TV. Fine. Next level, OTT and video, right? OLV. That's really what you should be looking at. But unfortunately, what that takes is content, Shaun. And you know this better than most. Dealers don't have those people at their dealership to create this content, to have that opportunity to get into the video space. But that's another very inexpensive way to brand. I think it's a breakout, right? I think you need to brand and you need to get the mid to low funnel. That's obviously the goal. And there's different things to help with both. And I think that people don't give enough focus to that. Where are you, before we get into the process side quickly, where are you on the video side of things right now? How does Shaun feel about all the space?
Always have loved video, really big fan. You just said something though that's really typically the biggest challenge for businesses, not just dealers, but certainly with dealers, and that is creating video content that anybody gives a shit about, that anybody's going to stop and watch, right? So I've said this for years now. You know, if you took your old newspaper ads and the equivalent of what you were doing there, and those are now your display ads, wrong, right? If you took what you were doing on TV and you're just throwing those onto YouTube or Rumble or wherever, wrong. You have to literally have a strategy that's thoughtful to that audience. Why are they there? They're typically there because they hate the regular TV experience. And another thing about, the COVID era of 2020, I mean, you've watched, the streaming of content and
dude, I cut my cord. I never thought I would do it because I'm a sports nut. I cut my cord in March because sports went away. So the second sports went away, I got no use for TV. It's the only thing I use it for because I don't live in my market of my team. So I need to buy all the packages, have all the shit. Soon as that went away, I was cool. And when hockey came back, because the way it was set up, it was all on one channel that was national. So I never really gave a shit about it until baseball season. I got the package or whatever, but I could watch it directly through MLB, just like I'm watching this year directly through the NHL. Yeah, I have local ads. And guys, that's the thing. You can be put into all these platforms. Don't let anyone tell you can't be on ESPN because it's owned by ESPN's walled off garden. That's absolute nonsense. There are very little owned only providers anymore. These guys all play into a network. It's just like the stock market. They all put their stocks in. People all bid to acquire them and they move on. Some do it at bigger scale. Some buy a year ahead. Some pay up. And let me tell you something. If you can get hooked up with a company who pays up front, they probably can guarantee you a lower CPM. But know this, a lower CPM isn't always the answer. Because if you really want to do shit right, you got to layer in extra data. And if you want to layer in extra data, you got to pay for it. You pay for it through your CPM. So don't get lost, people, when you hear someone say, I can do $25 CPM. And be sure it's not a blend of OLV and OTT. A lot of providers do that. So they can drive the cost down with one, drive the cost up with another, and show you the middle, and then just sell it to you as the only alternative. So
there is that you make a good point in there, because you can choose some of the providers that will really shotgun blast, boom, like broad range, and every once in a while, that's not a bad idea, right? Right? Just, hey, let's get everywhere. But when you've got to put that down and you've got to get the sniper rifle, especially when it comes into YouTube advertising. I have a couple of clients that I'm doing YouTube with that have seen really great results. Most of what they're looking for is they just want more views. They use it as complete brand exposure. If they harvest one single lead out of it, they're happier than a pig in shit. So, if you have YouTube, whether you're going to do it in-house or you're going to have somebody do it for you, make sure that they actually go into the details, like taste the fertilizer. And what I mean by that is, if like I have a client that I've done some stuff where they're into extreme sports and wingsuits and all this kind of stuff. And I set up a campaign for them where placement targeting there was really important, right? I'm looking for Red Bull, right? I'm drafting off their channel, like for placements. I'm looking up Nitro Circus and Travis Pastrana. And so you can go into setting up your YouTube video ad and you can get very specifically detailed into what YouTube channels, what YouTube videos, what websites are relative to this content that you want to put some money behind. And then you let it roll a little bit, but then you go back in and make your adjustments. And again,
and those providers should have all that reporting, Shaun. Like, no more excuses about if they don't have it, do not engage people. Vet them first. Make sure you see their breadth of reporting. Make sure you see their network buys. Maybe they're only on Pornhub for all you know, and you're buying things you would never want your brand associated with. Make sure they have areas that they've actually said negative, right? That we do not want our ads placed here, and they go out of their way to exclude those markets. There's a lot of this is the Wild West now. This is like paid search a decade ago, Shaun. That's what's happening right now in the OTT space. And people are just, dude, I just got a call today from my buddy. He said, Shaun, what are we going to do? FCA is giving us a free $5,000 for the next 2 months to spend on OTT. I'm like, you're in Kansas. Where the fuck are you going to spend $5,000 on OTT? And who told you to do that? Yeah. It's insane, dude. So, but we both agree video is huge. Figure out a way to get yourself the content, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Get good. Either acquire great content, hire somebody to make you great content, or
or get out your fucking iPhone and give it a shot. Okay, these new iPhones are like 4K 1080s. Like, just go out and try something and see. You don't have to post it anywhere. Send it to your friends, see if they gave a shit. There's just so many things you can try.
And you know what? You can supplement just a little bit of video shots from your iPhone. There's a lot. It's so easy now to shoot some of your own content, but it's also never been easier to supplement that content with really simple video editing tools. Like, if you don't want to go, like, I have the whole Adobe suite. So I've got Premiere. Sometimes I use the scaled down version of Premiere, which is Premiere Rush. But I've used, good grief, Vegas. I've used Create Studio. I've used.
Now look, that's that. See, this is what I love about you, because that's it. So Shaun gives you the DIY side, and I'll tell you, I know of a video production company run by my boy Alex out in California that if you can get him the footage, he'll take it with the OEM footage he already pays to license, because if you want good footage, it's got to be licensed. And he puts it with your local flavor and creates videos for you, all done online through a Google Drive. So my point is, we live in a place now where we can all do this shit. We all know someone who knows someone that can help you. You got to take the first step. You got to put yourself out there to say you want the help. And then guys like us, we're like the Kevin Bacon 6 degrees. You know what I mean? I'm 3 phone calls away from the absolute top of a mountain. Just scale it and I'll go there for you.
Yeah. The only person keeping you from learning that new skill is yourself, right? So unless the mirrors are broken in your house, in your dealership, in your car, and everywhere else where you might see a reflection, guess what? That's the only person that's stopping you. I know
well enough about myself, Shaun, that I wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't do it myself. I wouldn't take the time. Dude, my podcast, this show, is edited by my business partner. And it's not much of an edit. He puts on a front, he puts on a back, and we roll. We don't do nothing else. But my point is, even that isn't something I'm going to take the time to fill up in my brain, because in here is data, client services, next steps, all these other things. I cannot, and dealers, if you're the owner, dude, do not be thinking about doing this shit yourself.
No.
You want to be involved. You want to be the voice of something cool, awesome. But GMs, if you're thinking about doing this yourself, don't. Sales managers, same fucking thing. You need to find someone in your store to make responsible. And remember, they might not sell a car or get a lead, but what they're doing is impacting your brand far beyond shit you can see on paper. That is still the case.
Vast majority of franchise dealers are not going to have the time or the talent to go and say, hey, we're going to actually start churning out tons of video content on our own. And there are a lot of really solid providers. Sounds like you've got a buddy that does this. I just think it's always important, even if you do a little reading on like, well, how does this stuff work, that you educate yourself so that your knowledge actually helps you when you're trying to decide, well, who should we go with? How do they do like that? It's always helpful, but
it's all part of the vetting, people. Vet. It's what we do for a living. It's all we do. And it's important that you understand that not all vendors are created equal. As a matter of fact, there's probably only a 5% of vendors that are worth what they're selling to you. The other 95 are not. And I'm sorry to say that. I know it's terrible to hear, but it's the reality we live in. So Shaun, you've been more than generous with your time, dude. Let me just, because we've gone way over my estimate, and I knew this would happen. I haven't seen you in forever. I told you pre-show. You're the only thing, you and 3 other people, the only thing I miss about those silly ass shows. So the process, Shaun, leave us with the idea of the process, because we talked about where to add, how to add. But what are the key elements do you think people need to understand about what's changed? Because I think there's a big rush, Shaun, to tell you and me about how we got to understand digital retail. And we need to be able to sell our cars to customer online. And I still think that's a crock of shit. I still don't think it has nothing to do with nothing, because I think you need to be able to talk to them first, even about their numbers, before you think they're going to pencil their own deals.
Yeah, would you like to exchange back and forth the buzzwords that have captivated the interest of our industry over the last 10 or 20 years? I mean, how far do we need to go back? You know, I mean, it started even with pay-per-click around 2001 or something. Hey,
and then we added in SEM, and then we added it.
Right.
To tell you the same story. Yeah.
And then we go to big data, and we go to attribution, and we digital retailing. I don't know if that's really the right way to speak of it. I will tell you, I don't know if you've seen any of the stuff coming out from Steve Greenfield and Automotive Ventures, but he's putting out some really good content on really what's kind of happening there.
Yeah, no, I always watch Steve's stuff.
Process is still required, even within all of this digital retailing. Right?
Oh, is it? Oh, I'd see, because I thought my manufacturer made it sound like all I had to do was put the widget on my website, and I just started selling cars via Amazon here overnight. So you're telling me that's not the case?
Yeah, no, it's not something like that. You know, and I'll tell you an interesting story. I had a friend in Georgia who recently bought a car from Carvana.
Okay. All right. Someone you know in your circle. My friends wouldn't fucking dare do it or tell me they did. I'll tell you that right now. But you have someone who did. Tell me.
Of course, I'm like, I got to talk to you. I'm highly interested.
I want to have him on my show. If you think he's a personality worth having, you hook me up with him, and I'll put him on here. I want to talk all about it.
He's a car guy, man. He's not a dealer, but he's a car guy. He raced cars. Okay. He's raced cars his whole life. He's just, I'll put you in touch with him.
All right, I got to hear this. All right, give us a snapshot of it.
He was looking for a BMW i3. I didn't know enough about that little electric car other than it's kind of oddly interesting looking, little skinny tires. Okay. Oddly interesting. That's all I said. So he basically said, I'm buying this car. And I reached out to him privately and said, I am dying to know what the experience was like. What was that all about? Shorten the story to say, apparently that little BMW car had a bunch of cool different ways to option it up. Like when they were brand new, you could get one like at $50-something thousand, right?
Load it up, absolutely.
And now he's got everything he wanted with some very specific things, because again, he's a car guy and he's never ever had an electric car. He got exactly what he wanted from, I think he said the car was in California, had it delivered in Georgia. Okay. Well, he absolutely loved the delivery experience. He said it was so fast. He's like, if I wouldn't have test driven the vehicle, it might have been less than 15 minutes. Okay. Driver, super personable, paperwork, all this kind of stuff. But before that, there was a hitch. He said, I'm sure it's not with every single person, but I don't know how many people get to a point where they need to speak to somebody. So we have a process. I'm interested. I found your vehicle. You've got a website. You're Carvana. You're a dealer. You're whoever the fuck you are.
Yeah.
I found the thing that you have and I want it. Okay. Well, what's your name? What's your phone number? How are we going to communicate? Okay. So we're going to communicate this way. Bink. We start that process, right? Yes. Is it a lead and email exchange? Is it a process through chat? Did I call somebody? So he's in their normal, Carvana's experience, their process is pretty well built all the way through.
Correct. But it is run by people on the back end for the most part. When you have to talk to someone, you're talking to basically a gigantic BDC. So I don't want to confuse that thought.
But so here's the problem. And this was the thing that he hated about it the most, even though he bought the car. He's like, I almost didn't buy the car because there was a very, very good reason for me to talk to somebody. I needed to talk to somebody about something very specific on the deal because he's very well researched. He knew what was going on. And he said, I went into the normal, hey, I need to talk to somebody kind of process. And it took over an hour before he could actually speak to somebody, right? It was ridiculous. And that person answered and handled the concern, he said, in less than 5 minutes. And he said like 15 or 20 apologizing that he had to go through such a, ridiculous experience. Literally sat on hold for an hour. I think he said it was an hour and 10 minutes or something to get a question answer that took less than 5 minutes for somebody to help him. Now, I'm thinking, okay, digital retailing, whether you're going down the Carvana route or you're buying a Tesla or you're actually using one of the 4 million tools that now exist that dealers can buy and slap onto their website or buy through their website provider, there are still points of process that are critically important. And one of the things that actually Strala does when they're working with people in that process is they're finding out more and more and more that there are people that still need, it's like the Sherpa that guides you through the car buying journey. Yes. Even if you have all of these digital retailing options of, okay, I know what my payment's going to be. I can get here, I put in my credit. I got some payment options. Here's my interest rate. I've got all this. Here's my deal, right? Here's my deal.
I still need a person.
There are still things in getting to the deal that people need. Now, are there some that can just go all the way through, show up at your dealership, pick up the car, here we go, no problem? Sure. But sure. What is it, 70% or more of people that are buying a car from you have one that they may want to trade? Well, there's one layer of, how complex it needs to be. It doesn't have to be that complex if you use a really great trade tool, but still you're going to want to have that physical inspection of the vehicle when it gets there. A person may want to try to, tell you, hey, we can do this or with the car, or I've got these other options. It could be anything. So it could be a question about the trade. It could be a question about the financing. If they're leasing the car versus, financing the car, it could be any number of things in the process of getting the car taken care of. So even with digital retailing, we still don't have perfection in what the process is. Why do you think that is? I think that's because the foundation of process for handling sales opportunities through the internet, call them leads if you want, we still don't have that right or consistent.
No, we're still worried about get you in. We're still worried about get you in, make your appointment, get you in. I mean, it's just, again, people make me feel like someone who sees into the future, because in 2008, 2009, this is how we sold cars. We were a little Subaru dealer outside of the mountains. We wanted to grow and get big, so we decided to tell people that they could buy their Subaru up in the mountains and not have to come down, because driving the mountains is a big deal. People, it might be a 15-minute drive, but they don't want to make it. So if we would cut their door, not only would they pay more, but they're at their house and they couldn't have been happier. Our reviews were through the roof. This was 2008. There's nothing Carvana can do that my dealers across the country cannot do for themselves. But they can be people, which Carvana cannot. Carvana will always be the computer dealership. They don't have a choice, even with the fucking vending machine. That's not a dealership. That's not the point. My point is you can service, you can do it, you can be there. So, Shaun, here's what I'm hearing from you on process. We're already jumping into the next lead trap. Let's just call it that. We're already into the next lead trap in DR, yet we still haven't figured out process from lead trap 1.0. Is that what I'm hearing? Like, why are we so rushed to get here when we haven't even figured out how to communicate with a customer who might not want to come to our store?
Yeah, we have the perfect opportunity with the COVID, and we need to be, curbside and touchless and all this kind of stuff. So, and this isn't me saying that I'm all down on like digital retailing tools, because I'm not. But I am saying that did we learn enough from the foundation of poor process and lead handling before we tried to push people into a more automated digital retailing, self-serving process? There's still process points that are really important. And if we miss those, because we see them and talk to Josh and Vinny about them on a daily basis, right? That's the reason for that. Unless you have that foundation set, you're going to miss things that need to be part of that you're accommodating, even with people that want a more digital retailed experience. right? So there needs to be a broader conversation about all that. I'm all for the access. I'm all for giving people like the one-to-one immediate, hey, I love it. I'm all for it. Hey, pull the forms off your site and put on,
Chat
instant.
only.
Yeah, hell yeah. Put on in, put them in
But
one-to-one.
don't do it if you're not ready to do it. Like, I know it sounds hip. I know your 20 group talked about it and you
Yes.
think it's a great idea, but there is serious infrastructure needed to pull this shit off the right way. This is not a plug and play situation, in my
100%.
opinion.
100%. The process piece is still, unfortunately, a really open wound, and it if you do not, especially because our industry is so dependent on lead generation. I mean, I saw an ad just yesterday or day before from one of the big lead providers saying how that their leads close at 60, 80 million% higher than their nearest competitor. And I'm like,
who's that anymore is your nearest competitor, by the way, in the space?
well, and the other question is like, but how do you know that? Because it's dangerous to say something like that when you do not know the process inside of every single store that you sell your leads to, right?
Correct.
And I know from a fact of being on the side and working for a company that does see the details, that knows exactly how the fertilizer tastes under the weeds, right?
Correct.
That if you don't have that stuff figured out the right way and you don't have a solid process, there's really no way to know. You have to have the exact same consistent process in place for all of those providers, and then you'll know the truth. But it could be that, well, you can cherry pick the very best and then put them against the very worst, and all of a sudden you're torturing the data to make it confess and say what you want it to say.
And that's really what I come back to on this. So, Shaun, man, this has been awesome, folks. I told you I was going to try and make these shorter, but this is just natural here. This could go on for the rest of the night if time were not of the essence. But so here's what I would say. Shaun's points on the topics were, where should we spend our money? We should spend our money on the SEO, a little bit of paid search, be open to what's coming out in the paid search realm, listen, understand how it may or may not fit into your brand, and be careful. Manufacturers are starting to press it on you without really them even knowing. So be careful there. But even more so, you worry about all the leads. Where am I going to get the leads? How am I going to get the leads? I would tell you for this year, stop worrying about where you're going to get them and start thinking about how you're going to handle them. Mm-hmm. And really make this the year of the focus of, no matter where I get them, chat, instant message, I don't care. How are you going to handle them? What's going to be important? That's how we look at it. So, Shaun Rains, you have been an incredible, incredible guest, bringing all the knowledge I could ever have hoped for. Thank you so much, my friend. Any last words from where you sit to the audience on the topic?
Be the difference. The world's dying for it. So if you're just being the same old person you were, you're going to be in the same old place you've always been, and you'll have only yourself to thank for it. So try to be the difference. And that means if you've got to make some hard cuts, people, things, whatever it is in your life, make them. You got one life, man. You got one spin around the merry-go-round. And I don't know, maybe that's just because the last year served me a whole lot of sorrow and perspective. But I'm telling you, man, it's worth it to take a little inventory of what's going on and recalibrate on the shit that really matters.
I love it, dude. Be the difference. Be who you want to be for you. And that's what we're after. So again, man, thanks a lot for being on. I really appreciate it. Everybody, you can find Shaun Rains, the dealer superhero. I see him on the LinkedIn. I'm sure he's on Facebook. You can tune into what Shaun's up to anytime. Don't forget, we'll be back next week with a fun little show. It's gonna be a good time. I hope you tune in. Thanks again for joining us, and have a great week.